It's the 10th day of summer of the 1088th year of the Calretic calendar. It's the campaigning season and we're returning home from facing the enemy in battle. As we approach the highlands after defeating an army of Landians, my scouts noticed torches in the distance. There was another army of mounted warriors not 7 miles from our position. I sent a small scouting party ahead to gather some reconnaissance on the threat, while the main body would follow at a distance. It took an hour for the scouts to return from their mission. "Commander Milana," the head scout exclaimed, "nearly 200 men. 170 battle ready, 20 wounded." The army's composition was 70 heavy and auxiliary cavalry, 60 archers, 40 light infantry. I asked the scout if they knew who was commanding this army. They said that the men in the party addressed the commander as Baron Barracan, my lady. We'll shadow them from a distance for now, and make our move when we can. Only a moment later, we saw the enemy array in battle formation, and there was sounds of fighting coming from their direction. A small battanian force of about 20 was intercepted and squashed. They didn't stand much of a chance against the numerous horsemen. The Lord and his retinue went down fighting, but was inevitably captured. The prisoners held by the Lord's retinue were also conscripted into the enemy of Landian's army, making up for their injured troop, raising their numbers well over 180 active combatants. My men were battle ready, but I was still wounded along with 2 of my commanders, and we were outnumbered 2 to 1. Regardless, we had to mobilize against this force before they became a real threat. So all 120 of us sallied out to face the enemy. Outnumbered or not, we will face the threat the best we can. When we were within 500 meters of our foes, we arrayed in battle formation. I went afield to go meet with Baron Barracan, the enemy commander, to go speak terms for our fellow battalion's release. We had a few imprisoned Vlandian lords that I'm certain the commander would have wanted in his debt for their release. But before I even spoke terms, he started to demand that we surrender and release our prisoners. I didn't even dignify the pompous lord's arrogance with a response. I turned my back on him, and as I walked away, I told him that I'll see you on the battlefield. The terrain was mainly flat grassland, so it was perfectly suited for heavy cavalry. However, I have a plan to bring my men home with minimal casualties. I decided to deploy the infantry in a tight square formation to soak the enemy cavalry's damage when they charge. The Eldsworns and Legionnaires will hold the line, and the Falksmen will clean up any horsemen that get stuck in our formation. Next, I chose to deploy my archers in 2 separate groups and array them on the wings. This way they'd be able to divert some of the pressure from the main body of the army and deal efficient range damage on our flanks. I'll also be controlling when they fire their arrows. We need to conserve our ammo, especially since the enemy outnumbers us. The heavy cav will also be split to hold the wings. They'll be right behind the archers to keep the enemy cav from harassing them too much. I'll also need them to skirmish and harass the enemy along with our mounted archers. If they can halt and disrupt the enemy formation, it will give us some time to position for the killing blow. I'll be skirmishing as well to keep morale high. We battalions are just as good riders as we are renowned grounds fighters. I'll also be there to disrupt any immediate cavalry charge to our lines. However, I'm still wounded. If I go down, the men will lose cohesion. I still have to hold my discipline as a commander. I thirst for battle just as much as my men do, but they are lost without me to guide them. At least that's what my captains tell me. The enemy army has a lot of horsemen, but they have to decide where they wish to attack. They will most likely go after the infantry, because if they can soften the main body of the army, their light infantry and crossbowmen can finish the job. I'm hoping that's the conclusion they've come to. It'll make our job that much easier. The gallop of thundering horsemen barreling towards our lines sounded like waves crashing against the shore, signaling that our battle had just begun. The enemy's mounted archers had just peppered our lines, and now their heavy cavalry is looking to charge. They aren't committing to a full charge yet. I think they're testing our infantry's discipline. I allowed the cataphracts to skirmish at a gallop. I need them close to our lines so we can support them. As the enemy withdrew, my heavy horsemen gave chase. Once they got too far, I signaled for them to pull back. The skirmishing cavalry claimed a few of my elite horsemen's lives, but their deaths will not be in vain.
I pulled back the remaining cav to hold the right wing that can hold their position for now, and I'll skirmish along with the mounted archers. The Fians were cleaning up the enemy cavalry by the dozen, making it a lot easier to repel the skirmishing cav. But it was a distraction. The enemy cav were going for a tight charging formation, so I dodged and went back to our lines. As I was returning to our formation, the other group of enemy cav smashed into our lines. "Now!" I commanded. The lines of shielded and shock infantry swarmed the stuck-in cavalry, slaughtering them and any horsemen that had been stuck in our shield square formation. Few would escape the Oathsworn's wrath, and any loose or weak charge would be broken before they even collide with our lines. Their equites, their squires, galleons, caravan guards, their heavy horsemen, not even their knights could stand to bring down the battanian heavy infantry. All they could do was escape, and those that weren't fast enough would be mopped up by the archers. There would be no escape. Charge after charge, the thundering horsemen stormed into our lines, crashing into our shield walls. The Oathsworns and legionnaires would not break, either skewing them off their horses or slaughtering man and horse alike. It was gruesome as it was awe-inspiring.
Come on! Infantry! Give them hell!
The enemy had 10 riders remaining, one of them being the commander, Barracan. I hadn't seen him on the battlefield yet, but I knocked a eunuch, the co-commander, out earlier. My men have held to their discipline against the rampaging horsemen and come out virtually unscathed. The enemy has no choice but to face us with the bulk of their army. I'll redeploy the heavy cavalry on the wings and prepare for the final skirmish. Everything has come to a head. The enemy infantry and archers are marching within 100 meters of the battanian line, preparing themselves for the final charge. I'm sending the left wing of cavalry to skirmish with the remaining horsemen. I'll probe the enemy archers on our right wing, and I'll bring the remaining cavalry with me. We'll soften them up for the final assault. The Fians are hammering them from both sides, grinding down many of the elite troops. One by one, the enemy infantry were slain where they stood, every arrow striking more furiously than the last. Seeing their will being broken, now is the time to lead the final assault. The enemy archers can't take any more punishment, any more pressure, and they'll break. I commanded the infantry to advance 20 paces to pressure the archers, forcing them behind what remains of the infantry. I sent all my archers on the wings forward to keep grinding down the enemy. I pulled back my riders until it was time for the final charge. Leading from the front, I rallied the men, preparing them for the final crescendo. Now, I commanded all of the remaining riders to engage them where they're weakest. As they charged the enemy, the archers managed to dispatch the commander before the lines of infantry collided, and I knew it was now the time to send the vaunted battanian infantry forward to finish the job. I went ahead of them to probe where they're weakest,
and to help support any of the nearby riders. The enemy infantry was slowly dwindling. After that, I returned to the lines to command the troops. I ordered the archers to advance further and dispatch anyone left on the wings. I gave the infantry the order to advance steadily and not to break formation. We've held together tightly, and I don't want them to charge before the time was right. My riders were still in the backfield skirmishing, with the remaining enemy horsemen keeping them back from supporting their already crippled infantry line. The time to crush this upstart army is now. I went back to our lines one last time and ordered a full charge. The infantry cut down the Vlandians in every direction, and none could escape the force of their arms. As we brandished our swords, we slew those who had not routed and those who were not fleet of foot enough to escape.
The battle was won, but the hostile elite troops refused to yield. La mort avant le déshonneur, the knights roared. As they fought and maneuvered on their noble steeds, I stopped chasing after the routing infantry and focused solely on the dauntless mounted warriors. They would have to be laid low. Capturing such valiant warriors would be a priority. However, under these circumstances, that would prove impossible. Without risking the lives of my elite troops, they would certainly be slain otherwise. After the enemy horsemen were slain, I went to go bring back the remaining elite horsemen, as well as any charging infantry. Didn't want them to get outnumbered and killed because I didn't cull their wrath. As I returned to the archers, I noticed that they had begun looting, so I left them to it. But there was still one remaining rider, so I sprung into action. I leveled my sword and prepared to swing. As the rider thundered towards me, I swung my blade and struck true. The battle was finally over, and we had won.